25 countries just dropped what could be the most important statement about Gaza this entire year, and the timing couldn't be more critical. The UK, France, Italy, Japan, and 21 other nations, alongside the entire EU Commissioner, have issued a joint declaration calling for an immediate end to the war in Gaza. This isn't your typical diplomatic language either. First of all, two things. First of all, this is the Western Bloc, noticeably missing the USA, but Western Europe led, right? That's historically been a bloc Israel can absolutely rely on. Germany, UK, France, send through the blank checks. They kept coming every year, diplomatically or monetarily, right? Indeed, over these last 2 years, even, and we're not talking about some distant history, over these last 2 years, the better part of it, they've been about as useful as stopping this war as a piece of paper, flimsy piece of paper in front of you, to protect you from a shotgun round. As in, like, the Western powers have been as useful at stopping Israel as a piece of paper would be at stopping a shotgun round. Yeah, that checks out. Let's carry on. Point number two. They're directly condemning what they call the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children. Their words, right? This is their statement, bro. The West. Okay, so they are condemning the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, who are literally dying just trying to get food and water. Here's what makes this unprecedented, because that's like, we're so desensitized. People getting killed while queuing up for food, while they're starving because of an occupation, not because of man-made act of God. It's not because of an act of God, sort of a famine or a drought or a combination of both. Yeah, that's fine with us. We're okay with that after 2 years. So here's what makes this really unprecedented. These aren't just Middle Eastern or traditionally pro-Palestinian nations. We're talking about major Western powers. This is why it's so important. EU heavyweights, right? The E3 in Europe, UK, France, and Germany. So two of those countries are right here. EU heavyweights and close allies to Israel are breaking ranks and flipping sides. Not practically yet, right? Not. They're not actually doing anything, but rhetorically, and that is the first step. That's undeniably progress, right? In terms of the analysis of the situation, they have moved in a certain direction. The statement, these countries were the ones where, Keir, as I nickname him, Keir, anyway the wind blows Starmer, who just sort of blows with the wind, whichever way. He's a human rights lawyer, apparently, qualified, which shows qualification means nothing. He's spent the last 2 years, every time he's asked about what's going on in occupied Palestine or besieged Palestine, in Gaza, he says Israel has a right to defend itself. Oh, well, but can they cut off electricity and food and water? They have a right. They have that right. Literally, that's what you were saying. There's videos of that, right? So for those countries to flip now and say, I'm about to describe what they say. The statement specifically calls Israel's denial of essential humanitarian assistance to civilians unacceptable and demands the lifting of restrictions on aid trucks coming into the strip. Hundreds, guys. Guys, by some counts, thousands of aid trucks are waiting at the border, not being allowed in by the Israeli defense, offense, occupational, diaper, whatever, Israeli forces, right? They're not being allowed in. But here's the most striking part. Over 800 Palestinians have reportedly been killed while trying to access food aid just since May, late May, end of May. That's people. Have you guys seen Schindler's List? Where are we? Honestly, have you seen that? I recommend you watch. It's hard to spell, so I won't even bother. Just write Schindler, however it sounds right to you, and write List afterwards. It's a black and white film. It's long as heck, but it's jarring, guys. It's a heavyweight. There is some nudity, by the way, so watch out. It is jarring because it shows you how in 1930s Germany and Europe under German occupation, how the Jews were treated. It was insane, bruv. Bruv, how are we doing it again, bruv? Bruv, what's going on? Queuing up for food and then just getting slaughtered. People are dying from gunfire while standing in food lines. Don't get desensitized to that. Okay, I'm not an activist, but the analysis of a situation so crisis mode, so catastrophic, will of course get me to be on the side of, not mowing down civilians who are starving because they're starving them. That's not really There's no bias there. If you're on the other side of that, you've lost your mind, to be honest. Now, the signatories of this statement by this joint EU-led bloc are calling what's happening in besieged Gaza, I cannot talk. They're calling it a systematic pattern, not isolated incidents. Now that's really important because they're really laying it on Israel, basically. They're not making any excuses for Israel. They're not saying, oh, we'll let them investigate themselves over the course of the next 6 months, and then when they admit something, you'll have forgotten because they're talking about some other crime that they're carrying out now. No, no, no. They're calling out. They're saying this is a pattern. We know you're doing this intentionally. You're starving the civilians. When they come to you for food, because you don't allow other humanitarian organizations to give out food, when they come to you for food, you just kill them, right? This bloc, they're also strongly opposing any demographic changes. That's another important one. They're opposing any demographic changes in occupied Palestinian territory. Did someone open my door? You guys told me. Well, you can't actually. You can't communicate with me. I hope you like my shirt, by the way. I'm just realizing now how nice it is. My wife picked it up. Anyway, these guys, the EU bloc, they're opposing demographic changes in occupied Palestine, meaning they're saying, Israel, don't shift the Palestinian population out of Gaza. This is their land, right? Essentially, rejecting Israeli plans for population transfer or for permanent displacement, which is insane, but this is actually the Israeli plan. You can find this. You can look it up. You can find articles even by Israeli newspapers like Haaretz talking about exactly what Israel's trying to do. They're going to make, they have already made the situation so dire. They're starving people. They're restricting baby formula. They're restricting food, restricting water, restricting internet, restricting electricity into the strip, fuel into the strip, which means their desalination plant is about to fail or has failed at the time of this recording. Hospitals don't have the fuel they need to generate their backup generators. They don't have the electricity. That would mean that they don't need the generators in the first place because the electricity is cut off as well. They're making it inhospitable, the Gaza Strip, for the Palestinians. Then Israel's plan is to move them into humanitarian cities. Bruv, what in the name of concentration camp is going on, bruv? And then Israel says, we're going to allow for voluntary transfer. You can choose to leave, bruv. Bruv, you've just made it inhumane, inhospitable. I don't even know if you can call the people who are still doing this to the Gazans human. You're making it that bad for them. You had to sell your soul to the devil, and the devil's like, bruv, I didn't ask for this much. And now you're saying the Palestinians in Gaza, they can just opt out. Well, that's forced displacement under the guise of sort of voluntary population transfer. Anyway, the EU bloc here are saying you can't do that, which is crazy for the EU bloc to say that. The EU is the sort of defender, the shield of the Israeli state, at least historically, at least over the last couple of years. You know, even Piers Morgan has flipped. Guys, it's dire. Bro, the situation is so bad. Do you understand how bad the situation is when Piers Moral Quandary flipping Morgan is now on our side, right? On the pro-humanity side. God. Basically, the EU bloc is not asking nicely anymore because asking nicely against Israel, you know, it's like trying to break down a cement wall with a wad of wet tissue paper. You know, in school, you'd wet it under the sink and go, look, it's stuck to the ceiling. I don't know why we're Eastern European, but there you go. The bloc is demanding an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire. By the way, that just means a peace deal, because a permanent ceasefire is a peace. Anyway, they're stating that further bloodshed serves no purpose. Congratulations, you've understood common sense that everyday citizens across the streets of basically every European city, let alone, you know, global city, has already known for the last 2 years, but better late than never, better late than never. Israel's foreign minister has already rejected the statement. I wrote this. I'm reading the notes and I'm laughing at it. Really? Israel's foreign minister rejected it? No. How could he? How could she? It doesn't matter what gender, really. They've rejected it, calling it, get this, okay? You thought Elon Musk was rich. Listen to how rich this is. The Israeli foreign ministry rejected the statement by the EU bloc and called it disconnected from reality. The West is now playing catch up after Bogota and the 12 nations that actually led to signing some concrete stuff. Check out my Israel in Palestine playlist for further details. Otherwise, for the unbiased news and analysis with otherwise